Welcome to the Rise to the Challenge podcast. Joined today, she's an inspirational speaker, author, award-winning music artist, and Grammy Award nominee. It's Deborah Johnson. How are you doing today, Deborah?
I am doing so great. Thank you for having me today. It's always fun.
We're so excited to have you on the show to talk about your rise to the challenge. What we like to do with all of our guests is go right to the beginning, talk about where you're from and what were you involved in growing up.
Well, there's a long story to that, because I'm older than you are. But I was born in Eatonton, Georgia. Did not stay there long, but came out to Southern California and grew up around here. I started piano when I was about 9 years old, and really took to music. Of course, I had a great story. Is that my grandmother on my mother's side? She came over from Italy. She's all Italian and came over and played violin and mandolin in Carnegie Hall when she was 16, and she graduated from the New York, there's a conservatory. And for a woman at that time was huge. But then she went into an arranged marriage and had a dozen kids and never played again. So, but that's where,
Wow.
but but that's where I think some of the bent for music came from. My mom always loved music. She was told she was tone deaf, but she's not. She wasn't. I mean, I've lost her now, but she wasn't tone deaf. There are very few people that are tone deaf. But that's how I started in music, and I had an ear. So with composition, a little bit of that, but also classically trained. So for a concert pianist and the writing and all of that. I love what I do. Just it's basically a creative field, and expanded into speaking at a certain point when I saw the market changing a bit and some of the audience interested in that. So that's where I met.
Was piano the first instrument that you were exposed to, or did you try a different amount of instruments, but that one was something special that you liked?
What I wanted to do first was play the organ. And I don't
Okay.
quite know what was totally the inspiration for that. But that was drawing me. But it was my mother got the advice to start me on piano first, which is very smart because it works on the technique.
Hmm.
And I've had to play organ before for different engagements, but it's I mean, I get by. There are organists that do a great job with their feet, and I have to look at my feet. and, and it's kind of a lost art, which is kind of sad because I've heard some amazing players. But that's what was suggested to me. And, I've had to play because of being a music major in college. You've had to try all the instruments, but I was never any good in all the others. And you can do so much digitally now, and usually I hire out with other players that are specialty in their fields. And of course, I was my sister's free accompanist for years, and she's a professional violinist, so that was fun. And I had another sister that played the flute. She never just continued with it with a career, but yeah, so we all kind of grew up with music.
What's the challenging thing for someone starting out with piano?
Well, I think a challenge, because this is all about challenge, it is consistency and being consistent at it. Because with anything, it's easy just to quit
Yeah.
because I'd like to practice. In fact, my, you'd think because the level I play and what I'm able to do, oh, well, just practice. It was just always easy. My mom had to bribe us. I mean, she had little boxes on top of the piano, and she'd have, for my sisters and I, and if we practice a certain amount per week, we got a little surprise. She tried everything to get us to practice, and it was, it's that sort of discipline. And she was so committed to us learning, and this is a great illustration for a parent because she didn't put the piano in our main living room until I was good enough to play. And the first piano we had with this old rickety upright, and at that point there were not electronic pianos, so old rickety one. So I had it in my room, and I think she had put it at that point too. This is really a fun memory to think. Now you're asking all these questions, way too much information, but this sort of antiquing was popular.
Hmm.
So she had this antiquing with this green on this piano, and we remember this green piano. That's what I learned to play on. But she would lay on my bed and count the number of repetitions. She didn't know how to play. She didn't had no idea, but she would count how many times I went through my pieces, my scales, my arpeggios, and that's why I can play and talk to you at the same time today. It's so natural. It's in the muscle memory, but it's all those years of repetition and a mother who was committed to if there was very little money growing up, but she was committed to if we were going to have lessons and take the music, that we were going to practice and do those repetitions. So that's a great example of for almost any parent, because I tell you that most kids are not going to do those repetitions without you either being there or bribing them with gifts on top of the piano. So
You mentioned practice. I was a French horn player growing up
good.
in school. And when I first I wanted to do the saxophone or trumpet. And I got asked to do a different instrument because too many people were signing up for those.
Right.
And I would, at the beginning, start practicing. And then as I got into high school, I'm like, I don't need to practice. I don't want to. And my mom would be like, oh, are you going to practice today? I go, nope. She goes, okay. She kind of
Wow.
liked it because I think if you're younger playing it, you just want to just play so loud that it
Yes.
just disrupts everyone. And I don't think my school challenged us. Like they said, oh, we're going to take a test on this. The test never happened. So what makes us want to practice when we just play all day in school? But I think if I practice, maybe it could have lasted a little bit longer than ending right when high school ended. And I'm like, I'm just done. I don't want to play anymore.
Yeah, French horn, by the way, is a very difficult instrument. So
Yes.
yeah, good for you. There are fewer incredible French horn players. So, but yeah, that practice beyond high school. Now, a fun story I love to tell is that my husband, I'm still married to him after all these years we've lasted, so very thankful for that. But he took piano all the way through till the end of high school
Hmm.
and very consistent. But usually that's the stage where people are making more career decisions. And
Yes.
there are very few who go into music. In fact, I've had interns who are music majors who will never make it in music because or they need to be in teaching or something, because the 1% of 1% work in this field. And there are a lot of things that you do to stay in this field. So, but I think it's good. It's part of the education of what I feel is important through the school years.
Was music always that career path for you? Or did you ever have a passion for something else that maybe you wish you could have done at the same time for your love for music?
That's a great question. And you were asking all these amazing questions. Usually they ask what I'm doing now, and like I'm going back in time here. Um, I always wanted to consider music as a field. I just didn't know what I was going to do. In fact, I do remember in the junior high school years, because I'm a singer as well. So I was in the choir and I thought, oh, I'm going to be a choir teacher and maybe I'll teach in like a private school or something. And I did end up, I got a degree. I had to make a choice because I was touring internationally, and actually I got asked to keep touring internationally by some major artists, but I was signed up to student teach with a teacher who had never even taken a student teacher before, and I was the one, and I felt very obligated to do that. So I ended up going into that education and teaching for a couple of years in middle school, but it was not my passion. So I ended up getting the graduate work done, teaching even in colleges and universities, but it still has not been my one passion. Although the training and teaching I do now, I love doing because I'm developing content as well. I'm not just teaching somebody else's material, and there's a lot of variety I can put into it, and innovation and creativity.
I was going to ask why the teaching style wasn't, but you kind of mentioned that because teaching, it's a lot of structure and you have to do what they're asking, where the content and the teaching you do, you have that control. You can create and envision what you want that curriculum to be or what you want. And I think that's what shows a true artist what they're able to do and be able to show expression, show that passion that you have.
Yeah, it's fun, and I like kind of, setting my own agenda there. Plus, was interesting. What was kind of really burnt me out at the end of that. Number one, there were the politics involved when you're at a major university, and I'm just not into the politics that way. Some people play that better than I do, but let's get to the students.
Yep.
And then I was teaching at a JC, and I noticed a lot of kids were getting just free education. Well, they weren't finishing the classes. Excuse me, I'm so sorry, but they weren't completing the coursework. And I was teaching even music business, and they didn't turn in their final. And I told them if they didn't turn in their final exam, I can't give them a passing grade. Well, it just killed me to fail half the class because they didn't turn, but they didn't have a lot invested. So, maybe if I was at a different college or a different situation, that would be, totally different. But to me, my classes were packed. And I thought, this is not a great use of my time and what I can usually give people. I'd like to give them more than just, book learning and doing this, that they're saying, here's your curriculum, and moving on with it. So yeah, I did not continue in that area. If I had, I'd probably be writing my own textbooks and doing all of that. But if I had the freedom to do that, it would depend. So.
When you're creating your own music, what kind of style would you say is your music style?
I've been asked that a lot. It's like asking your favorite song. And
Yep.
there's no telling. Everything is different. I tend to be, man, I'm so sorry I'm going to sneeze here, but
Okay.
it's really warm. I'm in Southern California. It's a little warm. And there's no cats around. Usually I'm very allergic. I do not have a cat. But the style, it really depends on what the song calls for. If it's a ballad, if the lyrics are a ballad, I tend to write, like a pop ballad sort of style. Even in the musicals I've written, have been more in a pop element or pop. I write songs that I love, not just the music, and melodies. There's a great quote by Roger Williams, and we've lost him now. He's a wonderful pianist, and he made tons of recordings and Grammy Award winners. But he had in front of his house in Los Angeles, he had this big wooden Indian statue, and he was looking. And a colleague of mine said that he had interviewed Roger, and Roger said, "What do you think the Indian is looking for?" And like, what is he looking for? Roger said, he's looking for the melody. So that's what many songs were. That's what sticks, are those melodies and those lines and all of that. And there's no set formula to writing a hit song. You just don't know. You don't know what people are gonna like. So yeah, as far as style, I don't know. I love a lot of styles. I thought rap was going to go away and never did. There were a bunch of us musicians that thought rap was going to. We thought when it came out, because I'm quite a bit older than you are. So when it came out, we're thinking, what is this? But I love the rhythm, a lot of the rhythm of it, but is this really music, and where's the melody and all of that part of it? So, but most, from classics, and I love the Impressionists, the Debussys, the Ravels. I love all of those sort of Mendelssohn. Love those classics. And then, of course, I love Gershwin, the Rhapsody in Blue, and when I'm playing. And as far as singing, a lot of there's so much different music out there. I don't know. I can't define one style or one type that I just like to write. That was a long answer. So sorry.
You're good. You're good. No. I'm learning as you're saying these things. So feel free. When you're writing, do you ever think, where is this going to end up? You mentioned musicals. We talked about Grammy Award nominees. Do you ever have that, or you're just writing because that's what you want to do? And like you mentioned before, you don't know what's going to happen next with it.
Yeah. Usually I have a purposeful writing. in mind. An album that I'm doing, or like a musical. I started writing musicals. My very first musical, I wrote to just work on my songs from different perspectives, from different characters. So it gave me an interesting, like, viewpoint from different viewpoints there. I've written, like, Wayfarer's Journey was an album I did that was mostly instrumental. And I did that for those who used to take piano that want to take it again, and or you used to play, you want to play again. So I wrote songs at that mid level. It's a mid intermediate, great songs, and they're all the sheet music is available. So I put that album together and I orchestrated a little bit, but it has the piano based, but that was for a particular audience. And so I wrote 12 songs for that. I've written around when I did like a Christmas album, I wrote some extra Christmas songs. So they're usually around a project that I've done. The musical's the same sort of way. I've written a song called Bad Code for a book that I wrote. It was just to put out as a single. And that was more of a, like a Michael Jackson sort of tune. And that was fun to do. And I did the video and all of that using green screen. That was a lot of fun. You'll have to click into that one. That's great fun. But just there's some singles that I've done, like Superwoman. And I've used that in some of the shows I performed. Some other just kind of fun single songs that will be out there for different projects then. And I'm not doing a lot of songwriting right now. I'm writing more books, actually. But, that could be in the future. I mean, I get these little ideas. Well, I think I might do another instrumental album at some point because I'd like to put out more sheet music, and that would be the aim of providing more music for those in mid-career or mid-level, intermediate level piano that they could play.
With writing music, sometimes we hear the stories with artists and musicians where it's long hours. It can be stressful. It can be very dangerous for personal lives. Has that happened for you, or are you able to manage both the professional life and the personal life that you have?
Well, at this point, it's easier because my kids are launched. Yes, yes, which is nice. But I have worked throughout. I've been self-employed for years, an independent contractor, and I've done a lot of different engagements. Also, I've taken on private students at one point where I didn't want to travel. I wanted to be around more, balancing all of that. So the writing is rewriting. And so when I didn't really start on my writing path more or as much, until the kids were at a certain stage to where I felt like I had a little creative energy. You have to, there's just a lot goes on. We had 3 boys, 4 and under. And so it was crazy, with all the activity there. And I would work, and I was a music director for a while. So I'd work after the boys went to bed, and I'd do a lot of my writing at that point. And then I could go during the daytime if I had to have meetings or whatever else, but I could do a lot of things in between. So, but writing is rewriting. It's not all of a sudden you just sit down and go, okay, now there's magic. Or I'm so inspired, I'm going to, that rarely, really rarely happens. And it's a craft. And things even happen in the studio. You bring the charts in and you're doing the vocal and you think, wow, I think there's another lyric that can fit there. Or there's something else that we can do right here, or do a different arrangement of it. So it's just different every time.
You talked about your kids. Did they ever find that music gene in them? Did they enjoy music because you loved music?
Well, I made them take piano, and I did not teach them. They still tell me, but they had a little basis. And then all of them actually ended up, we had a great band program at the high school, at junior high and high school. So they did horns at that point. I had 2 trumpet players that were usually their first chair, and they did the marching band, they did everything. So they did, and the wind ensemble, they were very good. They did it, they had that. And then the other one played saxophone and tuba. I always laughed at the tuba because it filled up the back of the car. It's a huge instrument, and it rattled the house when he practiced, if he practiced. But The youngest, and actually I have recorded with the youngest, he is the one that even from a very young age had it and still does, but he's not in that field. He's a professional, actually professional athlete right now. But he had so many like of those giftednesses. But
Hmm.
one of them was music, and we could tell right off because he could sing on tune, sing. It was the rhythm was there. He just had that, and he developed it. Great voice, wonderful trumpet player. And he ended up teaching a year and just didn't like. They were going to give him, didn't have a credential, didn't have a degree, and the district says, "We want you to stay, and we'll pay for your education. We'll do it." He wasn't meant for the classroom. Very similar for
Hmm.
me. So and he wasn't really an entrepreneurial type. It's a little different at that stage when he was ready to do studio work, which he could have done, like easily done studio work because he's a great reader. But a lot of the work had gone out of LA, and so there weren't as many jobs. It was just tough at that point. He got a lot of scholarships, but he decided to pursue another route for his life. But the music, that's the one that had the more natural talent, but it's not an easy field. And it was easier for me, I think, because I had some of those choices in raising a family. My husband worked more outside the home. I could be more working inside the home a little bit more. So that was a little bit easier during those years, even though I had a slew of private students. But I had taught since I was 13, so I knew how to develop all of that. I knew how to set it up. I knew all of that in that sort of business. So that's the way I could adjust.
The cultivation of the music industry is the Grammys, and you had the chance to be nominated. Talk about that experience, and for up and coming artists and musicians that their dream is to have that opportunity. What do you tell them to keep going with their passion that hopefully they end up getting that opportunity?
Yeah, people put a lot of, and I'm just going to use awards as general because people talk about the Grammys, and I have a certain feeling about that. But there, it's not all just about the awards. You need to
Yep.
do great quality work. And there's a lot of has-beens that have had a lot of awards. That what are you doing now is what I usually want to know. And to me, that's most important. To get to that level, to be even considered, is you have to do the work. You have to do a certain amount of that work. And that's wonderful. I mean, it's a good level to be at. And that's, the great thing, and how to, submit your materials and get the awards and all of that sort of thing. But again, it's just a trophy. It's just an award of whatever, if you're even considered at that stage. So many of those sort of competitions have become very political. And if you have enough money to throw at it, you can break through.
Hmm.
So it's not always about the talent. It's, you can try for years. You've got to build, again, you have to just so focus in that area to build enough people. And even though you think you have this great list, there are people that have more and a lot more money. And
Yep.
so they're paying, 20 grand an ad or 50 grand, and, all of that. And they just have a lot of, it's a big machine behind them. And even for an independent, because the independents, I was a part of the independents, which is still a major award. It's the same thing. It's the same Grammy. It's the same that, but you're not with a major record company, is what it is. So, but there's a lot behind that, and it's a great network. Wonderful people in that organization. I've supported many of them for what they do. But what I do know is I've done so much listening, and I'm very fair. If anybody had sent me anything, I listened to everything. And I could usually tell, usually by the first couple measures, if this was going to be worth listening to. Because, some people, they've got enough to submit for it, but it doesn't mean their stuff's good. And so that's really where it's at with the type of awards. You have to do this because you love to do it.
Yep.
There's a purpose behind doing it. Um, you have a certain audience in mind. That's very important as well, because you can create to just create. And that's very tempting, by the way, for a creative. I've been there, and I have to watch what I do as well because I love to create. Oh, I can do this. Oh, I can do this. I can, and to be very targeted in that.
Think probably people wish if it was that easy, they would do it. But knowing that they have to put in the effort, they have to
Yeah.
put the hours in, it
Hmm.
really shows you who is willing to put in the work to make their dreams come reality.
Right. And it doesn't apply just with music.
Correct.
This applies, and this is why I branched out because it applies to every single field.
Yep.
It's the same thing. It's the same principle, and it was a big aha moment for me in really discovering my greater purpose. Is because I had for years helped because I've written a number of books, and I just came out with my fifth. But I wrote this book called Women at Halftime, and because focusing on women at mid-career at halftime of life, and that's the title of my podcast, it was easier to brand that way, basically,
Mhm.
and a lot of women buy books and they, all that. But the principles in going a little bit deeper, I found there were so many men and women at this mid-career. There's a lot of fear if you're going to reinvent your life, first of all. And when we think about retiring, a lot of people now, they're thinking, I can't retire. I mean, look at our world right now. You can't retire. Plus, I've known people that decided to retire and hate it. So they want to, like, what are they going to do next? But helping people maximize their skills, their resources, and their experience is what I've done for so many years in music. But I found people were sitting on those. They were sitting on their skills, sitting on those experiences. They were almost discounting them. And I'd done that a little bit too in my life with some of the music because I felt like, I don't want to focus too much on the music. My goodness, but they were discounting that and not maximizing. Sometimes it's just not knowing how to maximize it.
Mhm.
Sometimes it's just fear or not doing the work it takes. That's another thing. Not doing the work it takes to really figure it out and
Yeah.
yeah.
For someone that's listening to this interview that they maybe haven't heard your music, what is
Mhm.
one song you would tell them to introduce them to your music?
Wow. I have some favorites. I have some fun favorites. And then I have the inspirational favorite is The Hero Inside, and that's the title of my keynote, and I use it in my keynote, that's why. Um, and really a fun one, if you want to look at the video, look it up, Bad Code. It's really fun. I did the video with puppets and green screen. That's a lot of fun. And then there's one called Superwoman, which is another fun one. There's one that's very impactful that I use in my speaking as well, and I integrate parts of the song within the speech, and it's called I Can Fly. It's very inspirational as well of, going through your life. It tells a story. Man, I've got a lot of music. Just look at my YouTube site, DJ Works Music. It's there's a lot of different music that's fun and inspirational. That's part of my message is to inspire because I find that people know what to do. They realize they need to do something, and then I talk to them. They're still in the same place the following year, but they need that inspiration, the hope, the push, a little bit of a push, and to keep going. That's basically it.
You just mentioned that you've written 5 books. When was the exact moment that you're like, I'm ready for that next challenge and you wanted to try something new?
Well, it was kind of dictated by the market for me. And with the 2008 and 9 shutdown of, the recession, the recession, as we're talking about recessions now, and the bookings that I had either stopped or were cutting down, and I was doing some headline entertainment and with large events, which were great fun. But I kind of saw the writing on the wall is with a recession that organizations, events, and conferences, they were hiring mostly the name acts or the one-hit wonders or the tribute acts that were doing the music of the name acts and the one-hit wonders. And I wasn't really a tribute act, but I had a couple great shows. One which was a variety show. It was a like a dueling piano, but was a headline act, and we had a great show. And another one, I had a solo show, which was the music of Andrew Lloyd Webber and Gershwin, and that was another great show. But I kind of saw the writing on the wall there, and so I had a couple agents that also booked speakers, and so I went and visited one. In fact, I went. I'm in California, but we went to Arizona. I went and visited her, one of the agents, and I asked her, "What's this speaking thing? Is this really a thing?" I've been in music, and at this point I was still working, and I still work for Disney, so I've done some events for Disney, and for years I have as an independent contractor, but that wasn't my main focus. I've never wanted to work full-time in that engagement. But so we talked about that, and I looked up a lot of the other speakers and all of that, and I thought, I could do this. I could combine, but the challenge part of it was figuring out how to do it and to use what my expertise is. And it's very similar to the challenge of somebody figuring out what to do next.
Yeah.
And how to use what skills they have. So, but that was kind of that turning point at that point, and kind of did some things probably a little backwards, but I thought, oh, I need to write a book. That's how speakers get booked. So I need to write a book. So I had a lot of contacts really all over the world. So I interviewed a bunch of people with my Stuck is Not a Four-Letter Word book. I found a lot of people were stuck. Sorry. But that's a great message. Stuck is not a four-letter word. 7 steps to getting stuck. So I interviewed those people, and it's basically a great book of principles that I got from a lot of those interviews. Good little book. And I started doing some speaking and kind of expanding. So that was kind of the start of it. That was my first book that really I had written at that stage. And I've written some other companion products with, an album, and I've written a little booklet with that. But this was like the first full-on book, and branching out, and I call it expanding my field into the field of speaking as well. Speaking and writing and training.
With each book, does it take a certain topic that maybe you've experienced and other people can experience or have experienced, and maybe give like ways that adapts? What's kind of the message that each book is sharing?
You're a great interviewer. You have such great questions. You've done your homework, haven't you?
I try.
You do. That's great. I love it. Usually there's a message, like the stuck message, getting unstuck. And I think of Bad Code. Well, that book came out of my website getting hacked. And I discovered and I thought it was so interesting, again, the creative part coming out. There's a real connection between you getting hacked, virtually like that, and mentally. So I made those connections in that book. And it was a really fun one to write. And then I did some more interviews on it. I said decades of code. So I went through every decade of life, some of the challenges that are faced in every decade of life. So that was a fun one. So that was, around messaging. Of course, the Women in Halftime book. I wrote a book called Music for Kids, basically, because I've been asked so many times, when should my my wonderful child who's like a prodigy, I'm sure she has so much, he or she has so much talent, and she's only 3. Should I get her piano? So I wrote this book, Music for Kids: When to Start Piano Lessons and Why Music is So Good with the Spatial Recognition and all of that. And it was kind of a fun book to write because it was more in a dialogue. And yeah, so each one of them have a little bit different purpose behind them. If I just wrote books to just write the books, it would be just like it wouldn't fulfill the purpose of what I needed to do it as far as the messaging, I don't feel. So
I like that each book has a mission or a goal or something that you've experienced and that you want to share, like the bad code, because there's so many people that can relate to that. But you took that same concept and adapt it in a different way. And we
right.
kind of talked about it earlier where you can take one item in maybe one industry, but that same can be adaptive in all different industries. CEOs
Right.
are dealing it, athletes are
Totally.
dealing it. It's so powerful because it's taking a market but broadening that anyone can experience.
Exactly. Exactly. That's you are right on with that. So the principles, again, the principles are the same, core principles,
Yep.
that are applicable, but you got to do the work.
Yes. Now this might be a little fun question. How many books would you like to write in your career as an author? Do you have that goal, or anytime you get that itch to write one, you're going to take that opportunity and go with it?
That's a really fun question. I do not plan on quitting anytime soon.
I love it.
So I just told another person I was online with today that we were doing an interview, and I said, I'm not going to quit until my kids put me in a home. And they'll probably say at some point, Mom, you need to cut it out now. Yeah, so I will be putting more out with the recent book, The Summit, which is an allegory. It was a great fun to write. It was most like writing the book to a musical because I've not
Mhm.
even counted those sort of books. But that, because of the story, it was difficult because it was difficult to scale it down and to be very concise in the story. I don't call myself a natural writer as far as books.
Mhm.
Not even in music, I don't feel it's craft.
Yeah.
It's rewriting. It's continuing to do that. So, but with the summit, I'd like to write a couple of sequels to that. That would be great fun. I hope I don't sneeze again because it'll be right at the microphone for you. But the I love that creative process, and with a series now I'm putting out of the roundabout and getting out of a roundabout because I've trademarked the Hero Mountain. There's a whole program with Hero Mountain, but the people they need a ramp going
Mhm.
up to the Hero Mountain, and that's what the roundabout. They're stuck in this roundabout. So I've been writing these articles. I don't know when this is actually coming out, but I've got articles out about this and a bunch of free downloads for that. But that'll end up being a book as well, a booklet. It won't be as long, but these books end up being 4 pages, but because this is it's an application book for a lot of that as well. So I'm big on application. So if you do the work, you will move ahead. So yeah, so I don't know how many more. I can't answer that question. We'll see. We'll see. Like when does your mind turn off in writing songs? When does it turn off in writing books? I write an article every week as well. So it's a constant, because with my podcast, I write articles every week too. So there's always material that I can use and all of that.
I love that answer because if you enjoy it, it should not stop you. Like, no
Right.
one should say you should stop doing it. Like, for me, I ain't going to stop until I want to stop. And I could be doing this for so many years. Technology might change by then, but
Oh yeah.
I'm going
Oh
to
yeah.
adapt to it no matter what. But we both have something we're both passionate about and we love to do. And that's the important part. Other
Right.
people's opinions shouldn't stop that. If we
Yeah.
enjoy it, we're going to continue to do it. Hey, but even if you're in that home, you still could be writing and still creating. That doesn't stop you
Exactly.
at all.
Yeah, I know. Hey, I've been in some of those homes visiting, and I've actually done some music in some of those sometimes. But a lot of times they have a grand piano in the middle, and I've
Oh,
seen people also that have grand pianos in their room. Hey, there's always possibilities. Give me a laptop, have that, and do that. And also, you're writing. If you've got good internet, you can work anywhere. And I work at this point too. I help people as well because I like to do it. I like to be able to work remotely, almost anywhere. I think those possibilities are really, in our really within anybody's grasp right now.
So, what does the future look like for you? What are you hoping to accomplish both personally and professionally in the next few years?
Great question. Um, a lot of what I am working on right now is because I have so much product,
Hmm.
is to be able to streamline it a little bit more in all the marketing. So there's a lot of marketing that way. Want to keep focusing on people, and that's important to be able to, I don't want to just focus on product and creative stuff with isn't going to help anybody. So and making sure everything is pretty much inbound. I don't do a lot of selling or hard selling of myself. I'm usually referred for most engagements I've had in music and also in speaking. People come to me, so which is nice. I like that. I've never been a hard sell. But if you like the material and there's something worthwhile that I could help somebody with, I love what I do. Love what I do. So what my life will look like, traveling with my husband and being able to work remotely during those times. And it's a little challenging at times, but it is possible. I've taken a couple trips this year, being away for at least a couple weeks. And, when you're in South Africa, how do you make sure everything keeps going?
Yeah.
But it did. Everything, there's so much you can schedule and automate right now. So I'm big on that as much as possible to free up my time for other things. When we've lost both sides of parents within like 5 years. And so we felt for us, we want to make sure we take advantage of these years while we're active. And I'm also booking active vacations. So I have one coming up with the bike riding. And so I'm riding 10 to 12 miles a day of just making sure that I'm in shape for that. And it's good to have those goals, just like having a purpose behind a book. Well, you have a purpose behind some of your travel. And I do book other stuff that's not quite that intense, but I think it's good. There's a lot of people that want to stay active, including me. And I'm married to a former professional athlete. I want to keep him moving because there's a definite mindset there when they can't do what they used to do. So I'm writing articles on that one too. So that's a really hot topic right now. So, but it's that's what the future. Continue traveling, and our kids, they're launched, and I have actually a couple granddaughters. So,
Aw.
building into the lives there, family's always been extremely important to me, and always will be. And that's keeping up with our kids. That's part of our travel right now. We've got one
Yep.
in the Kent, Ohio area, Cleveland area. We got one up in Sacramento. We've got one that's a little bit more local. But, getting around to them too and spending the time with them and taking the time with them is a priority. And you have to make it a priority. Otherwise, and usually you have to go to them. So, but that's fine. And again, when you set up your business how you can, and I can take the engagements I want to take, and I can travel for business however much I want to travel. I've never been one to book just gig after gig after gig. I could have done that in music all along. I've not done that. And I could do it in some ways, and speaking as well. And I'm not going to do that. I will take select engagements that come my way, and that I feel like too that I can be the most help for. So that's important. If this message is important, which is a great resonating message, it's a wonderful message. Getting out of a roundabout, getting to your summit, climbing, because you have everything it takes inside of you. You do, but there's that confidence. There's that getting beyond that fear, getting beyond that self-doubt, but that messaging is so important to be able to give right now.
The final question I'll ask you, for someone that's listening to this interview based on your journey and experience, what tips or advice would you give them to overcome obstacles, accomplish their goals, and rise to the challenge?
I love that. Rise to the challenge. It takes courage to do that. Courage develops confidence. And if you are going to do anything, what I say is take some time. I'm a huge believer in journaling, and you can do this any way you want. You can do it on your phone. You can
Yep.
write notes on your phone. You can do it. I'm a pen and paper gal. I like to write it because it helps me think, and it's how I've done it for so many years. You only have to write a line or two. You don't have to do very much, but journal your thoughts, and to be able to move from your point A. I'm going to sneeze again. I'm so sorry. In this very impactful moment, from your point A to your point B, you have to develop. You have to have a path there, and I've got a lot of free downloads on that. And sign up for my newsletter and get the information, because I give so much free information. But just to get to, I want you to get from that point A to the point B, and you have to take that first step. Mm-hmm. If you are on the starting blocks and running a race and you never get off of it, or if you're gonna swim and you never jump off the side and never get in the water, you have to take the first step, and then little steps, little tiny steps. There's great books on this, Atomic Habits, Tiny Habits. There's great books, great resources on those. To just take that, and sometimes it's just, once you take the first one, you can take another one. But people get stymied and they can't start. It's almost like dieting. You can't, well, I'm going to start tomorrow. No, all you need to do is change one little habit today, one little habit, and it'll happen. So that's what I would encourage you to do, to have the courage to start. And I mean, to just watch everything you can, read everything you can to encourage you on your way. There's so much free material. I have, courses, everything else, and I don't do a lot of private coaching. I've done that a lot of years with teaching, and so I just don't do a lot of private coaching. But with the programs, there are a lot of programs out there. I have them, but there's a lot of other people too. Find something that will help you stay accountable and to be able to move forward. I want people to move forward.
Well, Deborah, I want to thank you so much for coming on the show and talking about your rise to the challenge. You're inspiring so many people, and we're excited to see what the future looks like for you.
Well, thank you so much. I appreciate the opportunity, incredible opportunities always, and appreciate the work that you put into this. And you were very prepared. You were a wonderful host. Thank you.